Welcome to another moment of Photoshop, where in this moment we will learn some essential things about creating an animated GIF image. I thought it would be fun to work with one of photography's earliest examples of a motion picture study. This clip is from work by the photographer Edward Muybridge. He was interested in producing still image sequences to tell visual stories about movement. So you can see here that he's photographed this horse and rider. He did it with a series of still image cameras positioned along the run. His studies like this one, they predate the movie camera by more than a decade. So I think his work is perfect for exploring Photoshop's ability to create animations. What we're going to do is we're going to take this movie clip and turn it into an animated GIF. What I've done is I've gone ahead and not only trimmed this down. There's the films that are in archives of Muybridge's work are much longer, but I just clipped this out using the frame notations in the lower left corner. Just cut it out to the frames that complete the sequence or the cycle of images, and then I took that. This clip was just 2 seconds long or so, and I went ahead and created frames from the movie clip. So there are 20 frames in this 2-second clip, and here they are. So we're going to bring these into Photoshop and build an animated GIF. So let's open up Photoshop. What we're going to do is use the stack loading function. I get there by using File, Scripts, and load files into stack. Dialog box will show up, and I can choose Browse. Then I can find the images that I want to bring in. I'm going to select them all. Click Open. Then the images will load up in this list box here. Just want to make sure you're not missing anything. And then click OK. Photoshop will open. And as you can see with my cursor, it's going to be processing. Take a little while. That didn't take too long. Now all the images that I have imported in are each their own layer. My Photoshop, I've been making some animations. So my Photoshop has this timeline that shows up at the bottom. If yours does not, if your Photoshop looks like this, which is sort of the standard view, you can turn on the timeline by going to Window, Timeline. Okay, your timeline will be empty. So to load it, you'll want to look at this selection element right here in the middle of this empty timeline. Use the drop down to make sure you're working with the Create Frame Animation option. You don't want to work with video right now. The timeline can edit video, but we're actually just going to make a animated GIF, so we want to use this option, Create Frame Animation. If you select that, this here is actually a button. So you can click this, and it's going to load the first frame from our layer stack into the timeline. Here it is. Now we want all of these layers in our timeline. So what you can do now is choose the timeline options menu, open up this drop down, and select the option Make Frames from Layers. That's going to pull in all of the layers from your layer stack. They are numbered. This is the frame sequence. There is a time under each thumbnail. This is the duration for this frame. You can change the time, and you can move these items. You can reorder the sequence. For now, let me just set this to something short. You can audition your animation by clicking this play button. And in this case, you see that this horse is appearing to move backwards. Hit stop. If that happens with you, you can reverse this order really easily. Go into the menu options for timeline and choose reverse frames. Okay. And now we appear to be going forward. Okay. To set the time for each frame, you can, manually go into each frame and set the time. They don't have to all be the same time. You can make them different times if you so choose. It might look like this as a result. In our case, this is a pretty standard set of frames, and the images were probably shot at the same distance apart from each other, so they're meant to be all the same length of time. So I'm going to select all of the frames in my timeline, and then I'm going to edit the time on any one of them, and it will modify all of the frames. So now we're consistent. Okay. One other thing very important for an animated GIF is the looping setting. If you set this animation to loop once, it will run through the sequence once and then stop. If you want it to run a little bit more than just once, you might set it to 3 times, and it will run 3 times and then stop. Now, animated GIFs, as you know, they're on the internet, and people share them in email. They put them on some social media or chat text apps. Generally, those are set to run forever. So there's a forever setting here, and now it will run forever. It will just loop over and over again. If you want a looping cycle that is something other than these 3 options, you can choose other, and a little dialog box will show up where you can set the number of times that the loop should run. We're going to run ours forever. Okay, so that's the nuts and bolts of a basic animated GIF build. At this point, we can save this file. Save it as a PSD file to preserve all these frames and preserve all the frame animation settings. Maybe I'll just put it on the desktop. Okay, so we've saved this. We can keep working on it, or we can now export our GIF. There's not much we need to work on right now. If we wanted to customize it, we could keep going, but I'm going to just export the GIF now. Here's how we're going to do that. Go to File, Export, Save for Web. We get the Save for Web export dialog box, and there's a whole bunch of things on this particular screen, this interface, let's just go over the things that are essential and kind of a recommended starting point. For the format, you want to choose GIF. You'll see these other formats here. GIF is the one we want. GIF is the format that supports animation, it supports transparency, it supports looping. None of these others do all of those things. So you definitely need to have your format set to GIF. Here for the color table palette, this is a black and white image, so it's not going to matter that much, but you probably want to, in general, explore perceptive, selective, adaptive. Adaptive tends to be pretty good. You won't really see very much effect with this sample, but if you're working with a color image, you'll see how these different color table palettes deal with blending continuous tones of color together. Some do things better than others, so it's you should check it out and preview in this window here how these selections are affecting what the final file is going to look like. Color space here. Let's work with, if you're working with color, you'll want to try to include as many colors as possible. This is a black and white image, so there's actually not a lot of colors involved. I wonder what would it look like for 64 versus 128. It's not much of a difference. If you want to see a difference, let's go to 8. You see what's happened here? A lot of tones that would have been in a 64 color space are gone now, and so you see this banding here. It looks very low resolution. If that's the look that you're going for, great, but if you want to have more resolution, you want to have more tones represented, we'll go to 64. That should be okay for us. See, one other thing that you should do is make sure that this convert to sRGB option is checked. sRGB is a compact color space, so that's useful if you're going to be posting the graphic to the web or emailing it. Anything that goes on the internet, you want to be mindful about the space. And then the last piece, which is pretty important, is this image size. You'll see the dimensions of the image here, width and height expressed in pixels. And then you'll also see the file size over here on the left, expressed in bytes. So 2.588 M is 2.5 megabytes. That's very big for a GIF. Our GIF should, for web purposes, be under 1 megabyte. So also the size is very large. It's probably not a lot of GIFs out there that are 1,000 pixels wide. Let's just make this 480 pixels wide. I'll set the size in the width box, and you'll see the height box is it's calculating a proportion of that. That's because these boxes are linked here. You see this little link, so that calculation is happening automatically. I can tab out of this box to commit this number. You see the resize happens in my preview, and I get a new size reading, which is 700K. That's not bad. It's under 1 megabyte, so I'll say that works. This is good enough for our demo here. So I'm going to click Save to commit these settings, and now I get to place this on somewhere on my computer. The desktop seems fine. Here's my name, bridgeanimation.gif, and click Save. Okay, so back in Photoshop, I'm still in this PSD mode. But if I look on the desktop here, let's see. Let's look around on the other monitors. Here it is. Here's the PSD. And here's the GIF. We can open up the GIF in a browser to check it out. There you go. So hopefully this demo provides you with the steps. These are the essential steps. There are, of course, other things that you could do to create some variety or some specific interest in your animation. But you definitely need to do these things to get your Photoshop file into a state where you can build an animation and then export the GIF. So have fun.